All right, Nick, let's talk about the South Carolina Gamecocks. I think this is by all accounts an up and coming team. They've got some big time expectations this season, and some people are lauding them with some lofty potential as far as things that they can do. But I think behind all of that, there's a reason, some things this team has been able to do really, really well that has put them in the situation to earn these expectations. I think Gamecocks fans are going to love what we have to talk about today. But before we get in all of that, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, this team, some really lofty expectations this year. I think they're on the verge of breaking out, the verge of being one of the more dominant teams in the SEC. We saw them, I will say by all accounts, there was at least a chance. There was an air that this team could have made the college football playoff last year. There was an opportunity. It wasn't a big one, but it was there. People thought, when that final vote rolls around, it could have been the Gamecocks. Unfortunately, it wasn't, but I think they're on the verge now, potentially being that next team up to break into the college football playoff for the very first time. Let's get into this article, and we'll get into the data behind it on the other side. So this first is over from On3 Sports. It says, talking about teams, the top 10 teams that have the ability to break into the college football playoff for the first time. South Carolina was at number 3, which I think is great. It says South Carolina's schedule isn't the easiest, featuring consecutive matchups against LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Ole Miss. No kidding. Not to mention playing Texas A&M and Clemson down the stretch. But following that initial gauntlet, they have Lenore Sellers under center, who has jumped to the top of the 2026 NFL draft boards this offseason, have more than a couple on opportunities to spotlight this fall. And then again, Joel Klatt speaks on what he thinks is the key here. They got some stars. They've got a favorable schedule at the beginning of the season. There are some tough games. Doesn't really matter. I think the key here, though, is how have the Gamecocks gotten here? Where is the secret sauce behind why this team has slowly built up and climbed into now being one of the teams to potentially make the college football playoff this year for the first time? And I think a large part of that is what Shane Beamer has been able to accomplish in the recruiting game from since he got there in 2021 until this most recent 2025 and 2026 classes. There's a big trend here. So that leads us to our first chart, just showing what Shane Beamer has been able to do at South Carolina has been nothing short of remarkable. Every single year, except 2025, a little bit of a dip, but you see they get right back on track already in 2026. You see this recruiting classes, the overall quality of recruits they're bringing in to the school has gone up every single year. You see the trend: 85, 87, 89, 90, 88, still good, better than a lot of other years. Then again, this year, 2026 class, the most recent class, 91.18. So really great trend going on at South Carolina. And Shane Beamer, his way that he is able to recruit for this team, who in that 2021 year, if you look at where they were in the recruiting rankings, they were 80th. They were 80th in all of college football teams. That is very low. You look at where they are now, they're breaking into the teens. There's 15, 16, 18, somewhere around there the last couple of years. And this team is in the crust. They're about to break through. And I think a large part of what they are able to do, you talk about guys like Lenore Sellers, you talk about some of these big-time recruits they're able to pull off. Dylan Harbour, you think there's a lot of really great talent on this team now, and it's been a large part to what Shane Beamer and his staff were able to recruit and what they were able to do as far as turning around from being 80th in 2021 to being in the teens as far as recruiting grades go in these last 2024, 2025, and 2026 years. I think this has been a huge part of South Carolina's rise, and this is a large part of why Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks are going to be one of those under-the-radar teams to make the college football playoff and make a push, because they have the talent, they have the players, and they have the ability to do so. I'm curious what your thoughts are on all this, Nick, but before we get to you, Gamecocks fans, in the comment section below, we're talking about this year with the Gamecocks. We're talking about, the ability to potentially crack the college football playoff for the first time in school history. Let us know, though, What team do you think is going to be the most critical? We said there's a large gauntlet of teams that they're going to have to play at Ole Miss, Alabama at home, Oklahoma, a lot of great games there. Which team do you think is going to be the toughest for the Gamecocks to face this year? Is there someone that matches up against them really well, in your opinion? Who do you think is going to be the toughest team for them to face this season? In the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on everything going on with Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks here?
Look, I think they've gotten a lot better talent-wise, and I think if you pull up the graph I sent you, Maya, so we can just talk about it, and I think ESPN with their Football Power Index, and we've covered this a little while ago, recognizes it as well. You can see based on the trend working left to right from 2022 all the way up to 2025, they're incrementally getting better and better, and it looks like they're continuing to maintain that trend. It kind of follows a very similar angle to the recruiting graph, where there's a little spike based on the recruiting data you showed, and now we see a little spike after the 2025 season heading into 2025 where the overall talent is with Carolina. And I always look for that correlation, right? That's kind of an indicator that a team's about to really explode. Is their talent already on their team, their situation already on the team, which is what Football Power Index FPI, what that highlights, does that align with what we're seeing in recruiting, right? If we've got a super talented team, but the recruiting has a massive dip, I'm always like, something's weird there. Something's wrong, right? Why isn't a really talented, really good team getting a lot of great recruits? There's an issue in the locker room. There's an issue with the coaching staff. Maybe they're not that talented, right? Sometimes you can see the opposite. You can see a team that's terrible that's getting a lot of recruits. You sit there and say, okay, they're kind of maybe buying the recruits, or those recruits are going to come in and then they're all going to transfer. I think Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher a couple of years ago is the most recent example of that. What you look for when it comes to good teams, playoff teams, contenders, is that alignment of both great recruiting trend and great FPI trend, great current talent trend. When you have both those guys heading in the right direction and are in a good direction, special things can happen. Now, look, we know it's the SEC. We know it's a brutal schedule. Extended playoff helps a little bit, but the reality is it is a tough role to get into. The good news is for you Carolina Gamecocks fans, you got what I think most people would say is QB1. I know people like to highlight Arch Manning, but I think it's Lenora Sellers right now. We haven't seen much of Manning. We've seen enough of Sellers to know he is a special guy behind center for the Carolina Gamecocks. I think the South Carolina squad is the sort of dark horse, not just in the SEC, but in the entire country. We've got great quarterback. We've got experienced head coach. We've got the talent on the team, good spot, trending in the right direction. We've got recruiting showing that that's corroborating with that, trending in a good direction, heading in the right trajectory. We've got a strong finish to the season, building momentum, good offseason, right? Every box you could theoretically check, South Carolina has checked it as we get closer and closer to the start of the 2025 campaign. Now, look, it doesn't matter until we get to Saturdays and we actually see how good or bad this team is. And things could fall apart, things could go fantastic. That's the beauty of college football. You really don't know until things kick off and things go live in the fall. But I think if you look at everything that we can at this point, it's clear. I think the data supports it. The gut feelings support it. The trends support it, right? All of the energy, all the momentum, the pundits, you talk about Clan, everyone is noticing this right now, that the Carolina Gamecocks are poised to have a breakout season, to break through the barrier and be a legitimate playoff contender, probably get into the postseason and make a serious run at this thing. And I think this is going to be Shane Beamer's biggest opportunity. And to be even more blunt about it, I think this is the best opportunity the Carolina Gamecocks have had since the heyday of Steve Spurrier with Clowney, Lattimore, and all those guys, right? This is the best team, I think, across the board since that. We've covered that a couple months ago. I think the trend and the data has continued in their direction. And based on all of this, it's hard to bet against this Carolina Gamecocks team as we get closer to the 25 regular season.
Yeah, Nick, and I think when we look at how they've done it, I think that's important as well because we talk about this a lot with teams. You got to dominate and you got to dominate your area locally. And fortunately for South Carolina, they are in the SEC territory. A lot of great players in there. So we look at what they've been able to do the last few years as far as recruiting 2023. They got 7 guys out of the state of South Carolina. They're able to dominate there. They dominate Georgia too. They get 6 guys out of the state of Georgia. You look 2024, 6 guys and 6 guys, South Carolina, Georgia, able to do that as well. You look at what they're able to do in 2025. I think this is important. 12 guys outside Carolina. Again, another 6 guys out of the state of Georgia, just dominating where they need to dominate and then spreading out and getting great players out of other states as well. Trying to steal out of Georgia's backyard. I think that's going to be important for them as far as getting an opponent in the SEC that they go up against quite often. Georgia, if you're able to take guys out of Georgia, those are guys that Georgia isn't going to be able to get. And then finally, this last 2026 class, already another 5 guys early on out of the state of South Carolina. So doing what they need to do, doing what we say teams that recruit well always have to do. Focus on your home state, focus on your local area, dominate that, spread out to the surrounding area. The Gamecocks are doing that, and we're seeing the results. We're seeing the FPI. We're seeing their average recruiting score. Everything is trending in that upward direction. We're seeing wins. We're seeing, a team that's getting more wins on the field as well. So I think everything's trending. This team's about to break out, and I think this 2025 season for the Gamecocks is going to be something special because all of this data behind it just shows this team is ready to pop. And I think I'll say it here. I think this is a team that is going to crack the college football playoff this year. I don't know how far they'll go, but I think this is the year that they're going to be able to crack in and make it to the college football playoff.